I stared at the charred remains of my passport, the edges still smoking slightly on our marble kitchen counter. The blue cover was now blackened, the pages curled and destroyed. With it, my dreams of Florence had turned to ash. I had been planning this trip for 2 years, saving from my part-time teaching job, practicing my Italian at night while Alex watched television. A trip to celebrate my 40th birthday and reconnect with the art history I'd abandoned after marriage. What did you do? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. Alex didn't even look up from his phone. At 45, his handsome features had hardened over our 12 years together. The charming smile that had once made my heart race now rarely directed at me. "You don't need it," he said, scrolling through something that made him smile slightly. "I told Kenneth I'd join him in Tuscany next week. Someone needs to stay and take care of the house." Kenneth, his business partner, the one whose wife, Vanessa, had been texting me increasingly concerned messages over the past 3 months. "Have you noticed anything strange with Alex lately? Does Alex ever mention working late with a new client named Donna?" I'd ignored the texts, not wanting to face what they implied. But now, with my passport in ashes and his suitcase already packed by the door, reality crashed down on me. "You're going to Florence? My Florence?" The betrayal tasted metallic in my mouth. "With Donna?" He finally looked up, his expression a mixture of annoyance and something else. Pity, perhaps. "Look, Emma, this is a business opportunity I can't pass up. Besides," his eyes flicked dismissively over me, "stay home, clean the house, cook those recipes you've been practicing. That's what you do best anyway. I need this break." Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. In that moment, looking at this man who had gradually dimmed my light year after year, I saw with perfect clarity what I had become. A ghost in my own home, a convenience, a maid, not a partner, never an equal. "You need a break?" I whispered. "From what exactly?" He sighed theatrically, as if I was being unreasonable. "Don't start, Emma. I've made up my mind. I'm leaving tomorrow morning." My hands trembled as I touched the destroyed passport. I thought of all the small cruelties, my art supplies that mysteriously disappeared, friends he'd deemed negative influences until I stopped seeing them, the way he'd check my phone casually, laughing it off as just being interested in my day. "You burned my passport." It wasn't a question anymore, but a statement, the final evidence of what our marriage had become. "You were being ridiculous about this trip. It's not like you speak Italian anyway." He stood up, stretching casually. "I have a meeting. Don't wait up." After he left, the house fell into a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. I looked around at the immaculate home I had created, the one he had just told me to clean, as if it wasn't already perfect, just like he wanted me to be. Perfect, contained, and controlled. With mechanical movements, I walked to our bedroom and pulled out the suitcase I had already packed for Florence. I emptied it, then began refilling it with different items, important documents, family photographs, the jewelry my grandmother had left me that Alex had always dismissed as old-fashioned. I found my emergency credit card, the one he didn't know about, tucked inside an old college textbook. Next, I called Vanessa, my voice surprisingly steady. "Can I stay with you for a few days?" I asked. There was a pause on the other end of the line. He finally showed his true colors, didn't he? He burned my passport to take another woman to Florence. My Florence. "Come over right now," she said without hesitation. "Kenneth is away on business. We'll figure this out together." As I packed, I found myself moving with increasing determination. Each item I selected, each piece of myself I reclaimed, made me stand straighter. By the time I wrote the note and placed it on the kitchen counter next to the ruined passport, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, the exhilarating rush of making my own decision. The note was simple. "You're right, I'm good at cleaning. So I've cleaned myself out of your life." I took one last look at our wedding photo on the wall. The hopeful young woman in white looked back at me like a stranger. I realized with a start that I had no idea who she was anymore. But perhaps away from here I might find her again. As I pulled out of the driveway, rain began to fall, washing away my tears. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, But for the first time in 12 years, tomorrow would be my choice. What I didn't realize then was that Alex had more secrets than I knew, and that my leaving would trigger a chain of events that would expose everything he had been hiding. Not just from me, but from everyone. The surprise waiting for him the next morning would be just the beginning of revelations that would shake both our worlds to the core. Vanessa's townhouse was warm and cluttered in a way my home with Alex had never been allowed to be. Books piled on coffee tables, mismatched throw pillows, and walls covered with colorful art, much of it her own paintings. It felt alive. "Make yourself at home," she said, leading me to her guest room. I mean actually at home, not that sterile museum Alex calls a house. We stayed up late drinking tea, and for the first time, I told someone the complete truth about my marriage. The subtle control that had started with suggestions about my clothes, my friends, my hobbies, the way he'd check my phone while claiming it was just interest in my day, how he'd dismiss my ideas with amused condescension, the isolation that had happened so gradually I barely noticed until I had no one left. "Classic emotional abuse," Vanessa said quietly. "Kenneth suspected, but Alex is so careful about his image at work." "Abuse?" The word stuck in my throat, but he never hit me. "Oh, honey." She took my hand. "There are many ways to hurt someone." Around midnight, my phone started buzzing with texts from Alex. "Where are you? This is childish, Emma. Come home now and we'll forget this happened." I turned off my phone. "What are you going to do?" Vanessa asked. The answer came to me with surprising clarity. "I need to get a new passport, and then I'm going to Florence anyway." She smiled. "Now that sounds like the Emma I met 12 years ago. I'm not sure that woman exists anymore." "She does. She just left the house tonight." Sleep came fitfully, dreams of burning paper and Alex's cold laughter intertwining until I woke at dawn. I made coffee and found myself drawn to Vanessa's art supplies in her small home studio. Without thinking, I picked up a charcoal pencil and began to sketch. Something I hadn't done in over a decade. The face that emerged on the paper was my own, but different. Stronger, with clearer eyes and a determined set to the jaw. It was rough, unpracticed, but seeing it stirred something long dormant inside me. Vanessa found me there an hour later. "You never told me you could draw." "I used to, before Alex convinced me it was a waste of time." She examined my sketch. "This is who you really are, Emma. This is who you're finding again." My phone had accumulated 37 messages and 12 missed calls when I turned it back on. The last message from Alex sent a chill through me. "I know you're with Vanessa. I'm coming over." Vanessa's face hardened when I showed her. "Let him come. This is my house." "No," I said, surprising myself with my firmness. "I need to face him, but not here. There's something I need to do first." I asked to borrow her car, promising to return before Alex could track me down. My first stop was our joint bank account, where I withdrew half of our savings, money I had equal right to, though Alex had always controlled our finances. The teller looked concerned at the amount, but I met her eyes steadily. "I'm leaving my husband today," I said simply, and she processed the transaction without further comment. Next, I drove to our house, timing it when I knew Alex would be at his morning gym session. With shaking hands, I unlocked the door and stepped inside what had been my prison for 12 years. The house was in disarray, so unlike the pristine environment Alex demanded. Drawers pulled out, cabinets open. He had been searching for clues to my whereabouts. I moved quickly, gathering the things most precious to me that I hadn't taken last night. My mother's recipe book, the novel manuscript I'd hidden in the back of the linen closet, the small watercolor set my art teacher had given me before Alex convinced me to quit lessons. In our bedroom, I opened his closet and saw the space where his suitcase had been. He was still planning to leave for Florence. On impulse, I opened his desk drawer and found his passport sitting there, pristine and ready for travel. I held it in my hands, feeling its weight. For a moment, a dark thought crossed my mind. How easy it would be to destroy it as he had destroyed mine. An eye for an eye? But I wasn't Alex. I placed it back where I found it and instead took something else. Evidence of my existence, my contribution, the deed to our house that had both our names on it. the investment portfolio statements that tracked the money I'd contributed from my inheritance when we first married. Money that had helped start his business, but that he now acted as if had been all his. As I was leaving, I noticed the small safe in his office was open, another sign of his frantic search. Inside, I found something that made my blood run cold: a separate phone. When I turned it on, it was filled with messages between him and Donna. Messages going back not 3 months, but 2 years. Miss you already. Can't wait until we can stop hiding. Your wife is so clueless. It's almost too easy. Just a few more months and we'll have everything in place. There were photos too. Intimate ones. And plans. So many plans that didn't include me. For a future I knew nothing about. And financial documents showing accounts I had never seen before. Money moved into offshore accounts. With hands that no longer trembled, I took pictures of everything with my phone. Knowledge was power, and for too long, I had surrendered mine. When I returned to Vanessa's house, she was standing at the window, tense. Alex called Kenneth. He knows you're here. He's on his way, maybe 20 minutes out. Good, I said, surprising her, because I'm ready for him now. What happened next would change everything. Not just for me, but for Alex, too. The confrontation that was coming would expose truths neither of us was fully prepared for, and the revelation waiting for him would be nothing compared to what I had discovered. The woman he thought he had carefully controlled for 12 years was gone, and in her place stood someone he had never truly known. Me, finally myself again. Vanessa insisted on staying, but I asked for privacy. This is between me and Alex. I need to do this alone. Reluctantly, she agreed to go upstairs when he arrived, but made me promise to call out if I needed her. I've got pepper spray and no patience left for that man, she said fiercely, making me smile despite my nerves. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath and opened it myself. Alex stood there, immaculately dressed as always, but his carefully controlled appearance couldn't hide the fury in his eyes. For the first time, I wondered how I had never seen this side of him before. Or perhaps I had, but trained myself to look away. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, pushing past me into the house. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I had to cancel meetings today to deal with your tantrum." In the past, those words would have cut deep, made me apologize immediately. Now they simply confirmed I was making the right choice. "You burned my passport," I said calmly. "Did you really think I would just accept that and stay home?" He waved his hand dismissively. "Don't be dramatic. It was an old passport anyway. I'll get you a new one after my trip." "After you go to Florence with Donna, you mean?" His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Has Vanessa been filling your head with paranoid nonsense? This is a business trip. Kenneth is coming too." I pulled out my phone and showed him the picture I'd taken of his second cell phone's messages. "Is this business too?" The color drained from his face, replaced quickly by a darker flush. "You went through my private things? That's a new low, Emma. Lower than burning my passport? Lower than a 2-year affair? Lower than moving money into accounts I know nothing about?" With each question, I stepped closer to him, forcing him to back up slightly. The power dynamic between us was shifting before my eyes. "You don't understand anything about finances or business," he snapped. "That's why I handle everything. You've always been happy with that arrangement." "Happy? Is that what you think I've been?" The question came out as a hollow laugh. "I stopped being happy so long ago, I barely remember what it feels like." Something flickered across his face, perhaps genuine surprise. The thought that he truly didn't know how unhappy I'd been struck me as both tragic and liberating. "I withdrew half of our savings today," I told him, watching his expression shift from shock to rage. "I have copies of all the financial documents, including the ones you hid in your safe. I'm filing for divorce, Alex." "You can't," he started, then controlled himself, the businessman taking over. "Let's not be hasty. We can work this out. Maybe I've been distracted lately. We can go to counseling. While you're in Florence with Donna." I shook my head. "It's too late." He changed tactics, his voice softening as he reached for me. "Emma, 12 years. Think about what you're throwing away. Who's going to take care of you? You haven't worked a real job in over a decade." I stepped back from his touch. I've been teaching part-time for 3 years, something you'd know if you ever asked about my day, and I don't need anyone to take care of me anymore. His expression hardened again. Fine. Have your little independence moment. When you've calmed down, call me. But don't think you're getting half of everything. The business is mine. The house is mine. My name is on both, I interrupted. And your business partner's wife is upstairs right now, happy to testify about your affair with Donna. How do you think that will play out in divorce court? He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Who are you right now? I'm the woman who's been here all along, Alex. You just never bothered to really see me. He grabbed my arm then, fingers digging in painfully. You think this is a game? You have no idea what you're doing. Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs. Everything okay down there, Emma? Should I call the police? Alex released me immediately, his public mask slipping back into place. That won't be necessary, he said smoothly. I was just leaving. To me, he lowered his voice. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I replied, opening the front door. Enjoy Florence. After he left, Vanessa rushed down to hug me. Are you okay? I heard everything. I was shaking, the adrenaline leaving my body in waves, but underneath the trembling was a solid core of certainty. I think I'm going to be. That night, I made a series of calls. First to a divorce attorney recommended by Vanessa, who promised to see me first thing tomorrow. Then to the passport office to schedule an emergency appointment. And finally to my sister in California, whom I hadn't spoken to in 3 years because Alex had found her negative influence too draining. Emma? My sister's voice cracked with emotion. Is it really you? It's me, Rachel. I'm leaving Alex. Can I come stay with you for a while? You can stay forever if you need to, she said without hesitation. I've been waiting for this call for years. The next morning, I woke to a cascade of text notifications from unknown numbers. Colleagues of Alex, casual friends we had as a couple, even his mother. All of them asking what was wrong with me, urging me to go home, to stop embarrassing Alex and myself. He had been busy overnight, spinning his version of events. But there were other messages too. From women I had known through Alex's business circles. I heard what you did. I wish I had your courage. If you need support, call me. I've been there. Whatever he's saying about you, I don't believe it. Stay strong. Women who, like me, had seen behind the carefully maintained facade of men like Alex. A hidden sisterhood I never knew existed. With growing determination, I prepared for my passport appointment. Vanessa lent me one of her bold, colorful dresses, so different from the subdued, appropriate clothes Alex preferred me in. They're going to take your photo today, she said. Make it count. As I was getting ready, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice I'd never heard before spoke. Is this Emma? Emma Caldwell? Yes, who's this? My name is Donna. The name hit me like a physical blow. Donna Ford. I think we need to talk. Alex isn't who either of us thought he was. I sat down, suddenly lightheaded. I know about the affair. It's not just an affair, she interrupted, her voice tight with controlled emotion. There's more. Much more. And after what he's done, I think you deserve to know everything. What Donna told me next would change everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Alex, and about the past 12 years of my life. The man I had been married to was a carefully constructed fiction, and the reality was far more disturbing than I could have imagined. The shock that awaited Alex wasn't just that I had left, it was that his entire carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down around him. I met Donna at a small cafe far from Vanessa's house, choosing a table in the back corner where we wouldn't be easily seen. I had expected to hate her on sight, this woman who had been with my husband for 2 years, but what I felt instead was a strange sense of kinship. She was younger than me, early 30s perhaps, professionally dressed with a sharp intelligence in her eyes. Not the vapid trophy I had imagined in my darkest moments. She looked as uncomfortable as I felt. Thank you for meeting me, she began, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. This isn't easy for either of us. Why did you want to see me? I asked directly. If it's to apologize, it's not about apologizing, though I am sorry, she interrupted. It's about warning you. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a professional-looking website for Caldwell International Investments, complete with Alex's photograph as CEO. The site advertised exclusive investment opportunities with guaranteed high returns. "I'm a financial forensic investigator," she explained, watching my confusion. "I was hired 6 months ago to look into Alex's business dealings after several red flags were raised with the SEC. I went undercover as a potential investor to get close to him." The cafe seemed to tilt around me. "You're not having an affair with my husband?" A mirthless smile crossed her face. "No, though he thinks we are. It was the fastest way to get him to trust me, to let me see behind the curtain." She paused. "I'm sorry I had to let you believe that was true. We couldn't risk tipping him off to the investigation." My mind raced to catch up. Investigation of what? Alex has been running an elaborate Ponzi scheme through several shell companies. He takes investment money from new clients to pay returns to existing ones, while siphoning millions into offshore accounts. The business trips, the late meetings, the networking events. It was all about finding new victims. I felt sick. "Kenneth? Is he involved?" She shook her head. "Kenneth is another victim. Alex has been forging his signature on documents for years. He has no idea." The implications hit me like a physical blow. All those years when Alex controlled our finances, insisted I didn't need to worry about money, discouraged me from pursuing my own career. It wasn't just about control. It was about hiding his crimes. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Because yesterday he emptied the main business account, over $4 million, and accelerated his plans to leave the country. He's not going to Florence for a week. He's fleeing to a country with no extradition treaty, and he's leaving tomorrow." The room spun again. "With you?" That was his plan. I was supposed to meet him at the airport. She paused. "He doesn't know that we've frozen his other accounts. He thinks he still has access to about $12 million offshore." I thought of the withdrawal I'd made yesterday, the substantial sum that had felt so empowering, now exposed as just a tiny fraction of what Alex had stolen. "What happens now?" I asked. "Federal agents will arrest him before his flight tomorrow. I'm telling you this because when it happens, your life will become very complicated very quickly. You'll be investigated too, as his spouse." Fear gripped me. "I didn't know anything about this." "I believe you," she said, surprising me with her gentleness. "But you need to be prepared. Reporters, investigators, lawyers, they'll all be coming. And some of the victims may blame you too." I thought of the designer clothes in my closet, the luxury vacations, the beautiful house, all built on stolen money, on other people's ruined lives. Shame washed over me. "There's one more thing," Donna said, looking uncomfortable for the first time. "In my investigation, I discovered some personal details." She hesitated, then showed me another file on her computer, a dating profile for Alex on an exclusive matchmaking service for wealthy men, active for the past 5 years. There were records of meetings with at least a dozen women, messages describing his life as a successful, unmarried entrepreneur. He was living a complete double life, Donna explained gently. On business trips, at conferences. I should have been devastated, but instead I felt a strange, detached clarity. The man I had been trying so desperately to please, to earn love from, had never existed at all. "Thank you for telling me," I said, rising from the table. "I need some time to process all this." Donna handed me her card. "Call me anytime, and Emma, none of this is your fault." I wandered the city for hours afterward, my mind replaying 12 years of marriage through this new lens. The unexplained absences, the secretive phone calls, the convenient business trips, all of it now made perfect, horrible sense. By evening, I found myself at an art supply store, impulsively purchasing canvas, paints, and brushes. Back at Vanessa's, I set up in her guest room and began to paint for the first time in over a decade. Not with skill, but with raw emotion, colors exploding across the canvas in chaotic, cathartic release. Vanessa found me there past midnight, surrounded by 3 completed canvases, paint splattered on my clothes and in my hair. "You heard from Donna." It wasn't a question. I looked up, surprised. You knew. She nodded slowly. Ken was contacted by investigators last week. He's been cooperating with I couldn't tell you while you were still living with Alex. All those texts about Alex and Donna were true, as far as we knew then. We thought he was just having an affair. She sat beside me, examining my paintings. We had no idea how deep it went until recently. I put down my brush. Everyone's going to think I was part of it. Some might, she acknowledged. But those who matter will know the truth. The next morning, I watched the news with a strange sense of disconnection as they reported the arrest of prominent investment advisor Alexander Caldwell on multiple charges of fraud, money laundering, and financial crimes. There was footage of Alex being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury. My phone exploded with messages, some supportive, others accusatory. I turned it off and focused instead on my immediate plans, finalizing my emergency passport, booking a flight to California to stay with Rachel, and meeting with both my divorce attorney and a criminal lawyer Donna had recommended. You need protection from being implicated in his crimes, the lawyer advised during our meeting. Fortunately, your recent actions, withdrawing only your rightful savings rather than emptying accounts, immediately seeking legal counsel, your willingness to cooperate with authorities, all support your innocence. That evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at Vanessa's door. Alex's mother, Courtney. A formidable woman who had always subtly criticized my housekeeping, my appearance, my lack of children. She stood stiffly on the porch, her usual perfect composure fractured around the edges. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice missing its usual imperious tone. I hesitated, then stepped back to let her enter. She sat perched on the edge of Vanessa's colorful sofa, looking out of place in her tailored beige suit. "I suppose you've come to blame me for not standing by your son," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. She shook her head slowly. "No, Emma. I've come to apologize. Of all the shocking revelations of the past few days, this was perhaps the most unexpected." "For what?" I asked cautiously. "For not seeing what he was doing to you." Her composure cracked further. "For encouraging it, even. The way he isolated you, controlled you. I recognized it because his father was the same with me. And instead of protecting you from it, I helped him perfect it." Tears filled her eyes. "When I saw him being arrested on television today, do you know what my first thought was? Relief. Relief that someone had finally stopped him. What kind of mother feels that about her own son?" I sat beside her, this woman who had been my adversary for 12 years, and took her trembling hand. The kind who knows the difference between right and wrong, even when it breaks her heart. As Courtney left that night, she pressed something into my hand. A small key. "It's to our family lake house. It's in my name, not Alex's. Go there if you need a quiet place to heal." The generosity of this gesture, from the last person I expected it from, broke something open inside me. For the first time since discovering my burned passport, I wept. Not from despair, but from the overwhelming recognition of my freedom. Not just from Alex, but from the prison of who I had been molded to become. That night, I made a decision. I would still go to California to stay with Rachel, still follow through with the divorce and cooperate with the investigation. But first, there was something I needed to do. Something just for me. I booked a flight to Florence. Not the luxury trip Alex had planned with stolen money, but a simple, solo journey. The chance to stand before the art I had dreamed of seeing for so long, to remember the woman I had been before, and to discover who I might become now. What I didn't know then was that Florence would bring one final revelation, one that would complete the unraveling of my past and illuminate my future in ways I could never have imagined. The truth about Alex's crimes was just the beginning of what I would discover when I finally stepped into my own light. The Florence air felt different in my lungs, lighter, infused with possibility. My small hotel room overlooked a narrow cobblestone street, nothing like the luxury accommodations Alex would have chosen, but perfect in its authenticity. On my first morning, I stood before Botticelli's Birth of Venus in the Uffizi Gallery, tears streaming down my face at its beauty. A security guard kindly offered me a tissue. "First time seeing her?" he asked in accented English. "Yes," I replied. I've waited my whole life for this moment. He smiled. Then she was waiting for you too. I spent days wandering the city, sketchbook in hand, capturing impressions of sculptures, archways, the play of light across ancient stones. My drawings were imperfect but honest, just like the new life I was building. In the evenings, I wrote in my journal, processing the continued fallout from Alex's arrest. My lawyer sent daily updates. More charges filed, additional victims coming forward, media requests for interviews that I declined. The investigation into my involvement had been dropped quickly, as evidence of Alex's elaborate efforts to keep me in the dark mounted. On my third night in Florence, I dined alone at a small restaurant tucked away from the tourist areas. The owner, Bruce, a man in his 60s with kind eyes, noticed me sketching between courses. "You are an artist?" he asked, refilling my wine glass. "I'm trying to be again," I answered truthfully. He examined my sketch of the Ponte Vecchio. "There is feeling in this. Not perfect technique, but real emotion." We talked as the restaurant emptied. He had been a restoration artist before opening his restaurant, working on church frescoes and Renaissance paintings. When I mentioned my former dreams of studying art history, his eyes lit up. "You must meet my daughter Lucia. She teaches at the university here." Before I could protest, he had called her, and 20 minutes later, a whirlwind of energy arrived. Lucia was in her 40s, with streaks of gray in her dark hair and an infectious passion when she spoke about art. Looking at my sketches, she asked pointed questions about my background, my interests, my plans. When I hesitantly explained my situation, the collapse of my marriage, the criminal investigation back home, my tentative steps back toward art, she listened without judgment. "So you are rebuilding," she said simply. "Florence is a good place for that. This city has been destroyed and reborn many times." She told me about a special program at her university for international students, a 6-month intensive course in art restoration. "We have a scholarship for women returning to their education after significant life changes. The deadline is next week." The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. I couldn't possibly. "Why not?" she challenged. "From what you've told me, there is nothing holding you back anymore." That night in my hotel room, I couldn't sleep. The possibility Lucia had presented kept my mind racing. 6 months in Florence, learning restoration, the perfect blend of the technical skill I'd always had and the art history I loved. A legitimate reason to stay, to not run back to the safety of Rachel's home in California. But could I really do it? Start over at 40 in a foreign country? The voice in my head that questioned my abilities sounded suspiciously like Alex's. At dawn, I walked to the Arno River and watched the sunrise paint the water gold. On impulse, I called Rachel. "You should absolutely do it," she said immediately after I explained. "In fact, if you don't apply for that scholarship, I'm disowning you as my sister." "But what about everything back home? The investigation, the divorce?" "Your lawyers can handle most of it without you physically present. And let's be honest, Em, what are you coming back to? A bunch of reporters and Alex's angry victims? Stay in Florence, heal, learn, create a new life." 2 days later, I sat in Lucia's office, completing the scholarship application with shaking hands. "Even if I don't get it, I'm proud of myself for trying," I told her. She smiled knowingly. Sometimes the trying is the most important part. While waiting for the scholarship decision, I continued exploring Florence, each day venturing a little further, growing more confident in my solitude. I found small art supply shops where owners remembered my name, cafes where I could sketch for hours over a single espresso, quiet corners of famous museums overlooked by tour groups. I was sitting in one such corner of the Pitti Palace, sketching architectural details, when a voice spoke behind me in Italian. Turning, I saw an elderly docent pointing to my drawing and continuing to speak animatedly. "I'm sorry, I don't speak Italian well," I apologized. "Ah, American," he switched to English. "I was saying your drawing captures the mathematics of the design. Most visitors miss this aspect." He introduced himself as Professor Ricci, retired from the university but still giving occasional tours. When I explained my interest in the scholarship program, His face brightened. I taught in that department for 40 years. Let me show you something few visitors see. He led me through employee corridors to a small restoration workshop where two young women were carefully cleaning a damaged painting. This is where the real magic happens, he explained, introducing me to the restorers who happily showed me their work. The painstaking process of bringing faded colors back to life, repairing centuries of damage while honoring the artist's original intent. Watching them work, something clicked into place. This was what I wanted. This perfect blend of precision, history, art, and rebirth. Taking damaged things and carefully, lovingly restoring them to their true beauty, just like I was doing with myself. A week later, Lucia called. "The committee was very impressed with your application," she began, her voice carefully neutral. My heart sank. This was going to be a gentle rejection. "They've awarded you the scholarship," she continued, her formal tone breaking into excitement. "Full tuition and a small stipend for living expenses. You start next month." I nearly dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Professor Ricci was quite adamant about your potential. And your personal statement about restoration as a metaphor for rebuilding one's life. It moved several committee members to tears. That evening, I celebrated alone at Bruce's restaurant, where he insisted on serving me complimentary tiramisu. "For courage," he said. I called Rachel, Vanessa, and even Courtney with my news. Their shared joy reinforced what I was slowly coming to understand. I had always had support available to me. Alex had just convinced me I was alone. 2 days later, my lawyer called with news from home. Alex had been denied bail as a flight risk. The evidence against him was overwhelming, with more victims coming forward daily. The prosecutor expected him to serve at least 12 years. "He's been asking to speak with you," my lawyer added hesitantly. "What does he want?" "To explain himself, apparently. You're under no obligation to see him." I thought about it for days. Part of me wanted nothing more than to leave Alex and his betrayals firmly in my past. But another part knew that without closure, his shadow might follow me into my new life. A week before my program was to begin, I flew back to face him one last time. The detention center was cold and sterile. Alex sat across from me in his orange jumpsuit, the confident businessman's veneer finally stripped away. He looked smaller somehow. "You look different," he said by way of greeting. "I am different." He studied me. "Florence suits you. I always knew it would." The casual way he referenced the trip he had stolen from me reignited my anger. "You didn't know me at all, Alex. You never tried to." "That's not true," he insisted, leaning forward. "I loved you, Emma. In my way. Your way was control, not love." He flinched slightly. "I needed things to be perfect. You, our home, my image. It all had to be flawless. While you lived a completely separate life." I met his gaze steadily. "Why did you marry me if you wanted to be with other women? If you needed to control every aspect of your life, why bring me into it at all?" For the first time, he seemed genuinely reflective. "You represented something authentic, something real I thought I could possess. The more I tried to perfect you, the more that authenticity slipped away. So I looked for it elsewhere while keeping you as, I don't know, a symbol of what I thought my life should be. A trophy wife. A perfect wife," he corrected. "There's a difference. Not to the wife." We sat in silence for a moment. "I didn't come here for apologies," I finally said. "I came to tell you that I'm not your victim anymore. I'm rebuilding my life. My real life. And I won't allow your shadow to follow me any longer." Something like respect flickered across his face. "The investigators told me you knew nothing about the business. I want you to know I deliberately kept you in the dark. Whatever else you might think of me, please believe that." "I do," I said simply. "You never thought I was capable of understanding your complex financial world. Your underestimation of me was actually my protection." As the guard signaled our time was ending, Alex asked, "Will you visit again?" "No," I replied honestly. "This chapter of my life is closing today." His face fell, the reality of his isolation finally hitting home. "I really did love you, Emma. Maybe if I'd—" "Don't," I interrupted gently. "There's no point in what-ifs now. Goodbye, Alex. As I walked away, I felt the last chains of my former life falling away. I was neither his perfect wife, nor his devastated victim. I was simply Emma, artist, student, survivor, woman reborn. Back in Florence, I moved into a tiny apartment near the university. Its balcony barely big enough for a chair and my easel, but with a view of terracotta rooftops that made my heart sing each morning. The scholarship program was demanding, the techniques of restoration requiring a precision and patience I was still developing, but each day brought new discoveries. 6 months stretched into a year as I accepted an internship at a small restoration studio. My Italian improved, my technical skills grew stronger, and the woman in the mirror looked increasingly like the sketch I had drawn that first morning at Vanessa's. Clearer, stronger, more defined. On the anniversary of the day I found my burned passport, I took myself to dinner at Bruce's restaurant, now a weekly tradition. Lucia joined me, bringing along the newly restored painting I had worked on for my final project. A small Madonna with a serene smile and knowing eyes. "You brought her back to life," Lucia said, raising her glass. "Just like yourself." I smiled, thinking of the parallel. The restoration process had taught me that repairing damage didn't mean erasing history. The cracks and marks of age became part of the artwork's story, evidence of survival. Just as my own scars, visible and invisible, were now part of mine. "To new beginnings," I toasted, "and to the beautiful imperfection of being exactly who we are." Outside, Florence continued its centuries-old dance of light and shadow, art and life, destruction and rebirth. I had come here seeking escape, but found something far more valuable. Myself, emerging from the ashes of my former life like a modern Venus, not fully formed in perfection, but authentically, gloriously real at last.